Hello and welcome back to Media Beat. This is Tanya Garcia, editor of PR Newser, and I'm here with Doug Edwards. He is the author of the new book, I'm Feeling Lucky, The Confessions of Google Employee Number 59. And today we're going to talk a little bit about, kind of your role specifically. I guess I wanted to start by going back to your days pre-Google. You were the online brand group manager for the San Jose Mercury News. So what was it like going from a media company to a tech company?
Very different, and somewhat of a shock to my system. I felt somewhat out of place in a technology company because I'm not a technologist. In a media company, I wasn't a journalist, but at least I understood fairly well what journalists did, and I understood the role of marketing, and journalists understood the role of marketing. On the plus side, when I went to Google, I never had a problem getting my computer fixed. Or getting access to a new printer or a new driver, whatever I needed, that was all good. But the feel was different. The focus at Google was very much on the product and the technology and letting the technology speak for itself and testing it and seeing what people responded to, as opposed to trying to refine a marketing message that would convince somebody to try Google.
Mm-hmm. Now, as we mentioned in the previous segment, when you started, which was back in 1999, you were there from 1999 to 2005 as their first director of consumer marketing and brand management. It was basically a startup, and nowadays we're seeing a lot more tech companies, a lot more startups and what have you. And the question has been floating around that I've seen: does a startup need a publicist? Does a startup need a marketing professional? What's your take on it?
Well, I think it depends on what the startup's trying to accomplish. First, I do believe I came to recognize the truth of Google's core tenet, which is that the product should speak for itself. Google was also a believer in public relations, more so than paid marketing or paid advertising to promote the site. Because their feeling was that if they could get people to try the product, then they would use it and they would talk about it. And I developed a theory that I call the joy of discovery, which is that it was better for us to get exposure through unpaid media, through journalists and word of mouth, than it was for us to place ads. Because when users view ads, they feel like they're being marketed to. Oh, everybody sees the same ad, and there's no real special connection you have with a brand because you saw an ad. There's something different when you read a newspaper article or a friend tells you about something and you try it and you say, hey, this is great. I've discovered something new here. And that bonding, that branding experience, I felt was very deep and very true, and we should not get in the way of that by running ads that would put us in the same category as any other search engine that was advertising.
Now, was that your feeling when you first started, or was that something that kind of developed after working there for a little while?
It took a little while. My boss was someone who came out of Apple and had done public relations at Apple, and she was a real believer in the power of public relations. And so I could see through her efforts and then the efforts of the others who came to Google later to work in PR that we were building quite a buzz in the market. Some of that was just because the product worked so well. And we were fortunate. The product that we developed was enormously useful to journalists. And so journalists were among the early adopters of Google, and they were among the most enthusiastic users of Google, and were thus very open to talking about it in stories because it made their lives easier, it made their jobs easier.
And you've got this unofficial slogan, "Don't be evil," that popped up. Now, did that ever cause you any headaches, or is that a good slogan to go with?
Well, I talk in the book a little bit about the fact that it sets an impossibly high standard. And one of the values at Google was to underpromise and overdeliver. So we were always trying to delight our users and our clients and customers by giving them more than they had asked for. And when you say don't be evil, it's very hard to over-deliver on don't be evil. The best you can do is not be evil. And so that sets a pretty high standard. And I think it can be very challenging, but it was a good thing for the company because it did mean that they were being held to a publicly exposed standard of doing the right thing. Now, a lot of people will tell you on occasion Google hasn't lived up to that standard in their viewpoint. But at least they have that standard out there, and they are trying to deliver on it.
Very good. Well, once again, this is Doug Edwards, and he is the author of I'm Feeling Lucky, The Confessions of Google Employee Number 59. I am Tanya Garcia, the editor of PR Newser, and please join us for the third segment of our interview. Thanks so much for joining us today.